Ladies and gentlemen, pay attention. This is your boy, the coach from the WWE. I would like to welcome you to the very first wrestling podcast in the world to take you on a weekly deep dive into classic matches along with legends of the squared circle. Enjoy the discussion. Enjoy the back and forth. There's so much to get into. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Payoff.
Jeff, we're talking about Edge and the Hardys. I can't tell if it's 2020 or 2000 that we're talking about. Still in the news all these years later, man. This is Tom Healy, and as always, I am joined by you, my co-host, Jeffrey Ryan. Jeff, how are you feeling about this match?
Can't forget about the Dudley boys either, of course. We'll definitely get to them. They're probably one of my favorite parts of this match, but doing good so far. We're within the week of Mania at this point, and so the road felt long, but it's definitely for certain days have felt longer than others, but we are on the end of the road at this point. So
it's so funny because for years, I mean, I feel like for the last 3 to 5 years now, there's been this constant talk about, hey, what if WrestleMania was 2 nights? And well, I guess now it is. Not on purpose, but yes, we are getting 10 hours of Mania or 8 hours over 2 nights as opposed to that 8-hour marathon that we get.
Well, and if everything is to be believed, it has been recorded by now. So who knows, if it'll leak out beforehand. I know you and I both, we miss the stage or the arena setup photos. Like right about now is when we'd be getting, have already seen the leaks of what the arena is going to look like, and we'd be excited. So it's kind of sad missing out on that. But
looking at the seating charts, trying to find good deals on tickets, looking at what's going to be where the entrance comes down.
We're working the StubHub. Yep.
I have more fun in the days leading up to these big events, looking at tickets and looking for pictures of the set. We had Royal Rumble out here last year in Phoenix, okay? Mm-hmm. And there's this restaurant that they have in left field. So we we got into the restaurant, we snuck over to this corner. They had blinds because we were looking for the Royal Rumble set. And you could kind of peek in in this crease in there. It was pretty funny. So we just bought a beer and moseyed on over there and tried to see it. But you find stuff online, you find some of the arena or stadium workers posting stuff, and I'm gonna miss it. So, but the beauty is I don't think WrestleMania is going to cease to happen in big venues. We're already planning on LA next year, I guess.
It'll only be bigger next time, and so that's. I mean, we had ordered hats too. We were that excited. So
we had payoff hats.
We have LA to look forward to. So, yeah, I know. So we got fans could spot us, but you know what? Like you said, LA, we got something to look forward to. So that's exciting. So right. Of course, yeah. All right, yeah. No, we're missing. We're enjoying the good times here. But of course, as always, we always tell you, give us those 5 stars on Apple Apple Podcasts. Spread the word about the show. Just make sure you're subscribing wherever you're listening to. You know where to find us on social media. It's at Payoff Pod. It hasn't changed since day one. You can always find us there. So, Tom, what else you got for everybody?
Yeah, thanks for the continued support. The show continues to grow. We continue to pick up new listeners all over the world. So we appreciate the support on social media. We appreciate you listening, downloading, giving us the 5 stars, chatting us up on social media. It all means a lot to us. And the 3 rules. We don't talk current product. We work hard to bring you fresh information and unique takes on these classic matches. And ultimately, we try to have some fun because the world needs more fun these days. And it's funny, we're not here to talk about the current product, but lo and behold, we're talking about Jeff Hardy, Matt Hardy, Edge. Again, it's crazy that this was 20 years ago, yet, a couple of these players are doing big things still on the national stage. So just wild to think about, man. You go back and you watch this match, which I'm excited to do because I have not seen it in a long time. And you see what these guys put their body through and the fact that, 3 are still really active performers. I guess, 4th might still be around working a little bit, and the 2 other guys probably could go work a match if they needed to. So it's glad that these guys have, been able to withstand the punishment they put them through during this era, and are still moving around fine, and in most cases still working matches.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's one of those, like, who would have thought, 20 years later, here we are, and the biggest pop in probably the last 6 months was when Edge returned. So, but we'll get there. And so it's exciting stuff. But of course, as always, like, here at the Payoff, we give you that deep dive into a match every Monday, every single Monday. You can look forward to us being here. And of course, we got those 3 parts: the build, the payoff, the aftermath. We know, what they're all about. We know what they're all about. That's the good stuff. So, share, those reviews. We got some good ones this time, as well as our scores. So we've kind of hinted at it a little bit, Tom, but I'll start with, like, why I wanted to talk about this match. I think you said it a little bit. It really, like, these guys, for their early part of their career for this match, like, they had been around a little bit, but to think that this is what they did, and just how long really all of them have kind of reinvented themselves and stayed relevant to the business. And some of them more so than I don't want to say more so than others, but some of them still very out there, very forefront of what's happening in wrestling. And so I think this one's important, especially just with everything with Matt Hardy and AEW now, and Edge, in his match and all that stuff. I think it's more important than ever that we talk about this one and kind of where they came from and their beginnings and things like that. How about you?
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that, because that was pretty much what I thought too. I mean, I love seeing some of these old ladder matches and TLC matches, and, will they hold up, right? I mean, 20 years later, we're so used to, these big spots, and we've seemingly seen it all. So does this match hold up? How's the psychology on it? Was it a spot fest? And then, just thinking about this massive, incredible comeback from Edge, which so far, it's, a lot of what's happening in wrestling now has not been executed too well. I'd say the Edge return has been perfect up to this point. Hardy, he's going to get to go back. Matt Hardy's going to go back to, being able to be creative, which he should be, because obviously there was nothing for him in New York, as they say. And Jeff Hardy, man, the ultimate story of redemption. Can he, really stay clean and stay healthy and have another run in him? And where could he go? I mean, at one point he was a world champion, and fans just love the guy. So again, given where things are right now, what a fun match to go back and watch literally 20 years after the fact, and we still have these guys around. So this should be a really fun one. And I think with that, let's just jump right into the build.
Oh, it's time for the build.
So here we are. It's Anaheim, California. We're in a small little arena, so we're not doing the big stadium thing. April 2nd, 2000, 20,000 inside the Arrowhead Pond. And the tagline for this event, and Jeff, I remember it sucking, and 20 years later, I still remember it sucking. McMahon in every corner. It was terrible. And I'm not saying that 2020. I'm not being critical of the product. I remember at the time thinking, this is WrestleMania 2000. I don't know how well you remember this, but WrestleMania 2000 was like that's what it was called, right? So it wasn't WrestleMania 16. It was WrestleMania 2000. They made a massive deal about it, and they had this thing on pay-per-view, and I'm sure you obviously had to pay extra for it, but that day they did not replays, but like highlight reels of all the old WrestleManias, which, I mean, as a 16-year-old, because I'm the same age as WrestleMania, I thought it was awesome. So I locked myself down in the basement all day. I started at 9 a.m., 10 a.m., whatever it was, and it was like half-hour snippets, and I don't know if it was in equal increments, but you would watch highlights of that. Now, some of our younger fans and many of you are probably thinking, well, what's the big deal about that? Well, the big deal was we didn't have the network back then. We didn't have YouTube back then. Right. I had probably all the tapes, and I had seen all the shows, and, but to relive Hulk and Andre, you didn't do it all the time. You didn't see the slam every single week because it was part of the, intro, and reliving some of those moments and just spending all day really immersed in WrestleMania history was for me at 16 years old was just absolutely awesome. It was a blast. So I just remember that day because there's all the nostalgia of all the classic WrestleMania moments, and hanging out and watching all that stuff when you really didn't was just awesome. That being said, it was in stark contrast to what we were getting, which, and I'll go through it, was a pretty shitty WrestleMania overall. So they were building it up of like, and you remember WrestleMania 20 was really built up as well. Madison Square Garden, it all begins again. We've covered that a little bit. But this was at the time built like WrestleMania 10 and then WrestleMania 20 would be, as this massive thing. And obviously the year 2000. So they really built this up as being this massive, biggest WrestleMania ever. Not that they don't every year. But here's the problem with it. Where's Hulk Hogan? Where's Stone Cold Steve Austin? Where's Shawn Michaels? And the list goes on. Hell, where's, The Undertaker, right? I mean, This is a really weird show. And so obviously it's not all their fault, but I'm just saying that the names that you would think aren't there. And so you spend all day getting excited. They build this thing up, and I'm just going to run through the card. Now, here's what's interesting. And Jeff, I don't know, I'm sure you obviously looked at the card ahead of time, but did you notice how many tag team matches are on this?
Yeah, and especially compared to previous weeks when we've looked at Manias and it's sort of 16 singles matches, that's a lot of multi-person matches on this card, which it's, and you're going to say it weird when one of the only singles match is the women's match and a Hardcore Holly match, which, just
well,
crazy.
but that was a battle royal for the Hardcore Championship.
Oh, that's right. He won though, but right.
He lasted. Yeah. So I'll get to that. So we start off
Even
with the tag.
Wasn't. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
We start out with a tag match. Big Boss Man and Bull Buchanan defeating Godfather and D'Lo Brown. Think about some of the greatest openers in WrestleMania history. You have obviously Brett and Owen. You have the AJ Shane McMahon match. Edge defended his world title against Albert Del Rio in what at the time was his last match. We have other classic opening matches, right? We're obviously probably leaving a lot out, but we get this. I mean, what a terrible open to the show. Okay. 9-minute tag match, comedy, it wasn't even for a title or anything. Then you have this hardcore battle royal. Hardcore Holly wins it last, defeating Crash Holly. Then TNA, Albert and Test, accompanied by Trish Stratus, who that was early on. And when she debuted, my God, they would defeat Head Cheese, which is Al Snow and Steve Blackman, another tag match. So you've tag match, battle royal, tag match. Then the match we're going to cover, this triangle ladder match, which obviously was phenomenal. After that, a little, cool him down a little bit after you brought him up. We have Terry Runnels accompanied by Fabulous Moolah defeating the Cat. So we have a singles match, but it's really a cat fight with Val Venus, a special guest referee, that took 2 minutes. Then we have a 6-person intergender tag match, Jeff. Chyna and Too Cool defeating the Radicals. Great. We bring in these Radicals, Malenko, Guerrero, Saturn, and we have them losing to Chyna and Too Cool. Awesome. Yep. Got it. Okay. Benoit, Jericho, and Angle are in a triple threat 2-fall match for both the Intercontinental and then European Championship. If you remember, Kurt Angle was the Euro Continental Champion, which was fantastic. They had a really good match. This triple threat match was really good. Then Kane and Rikishi, accompanied with Paul Bear, defeat, and I use this term loosely, D-Generation X. It was Road Dogg and X-Pac with Tori. I forgot how watered down DX was later on.
That in this match, for those of you aren't unaware, it was barely a 4-minute match, which
it's just buffer before the main event.
It barely had the bathroom match at that point. Yeah.
And then finally we get this McMahon in every corner fatal 4-way elimination match, 36 minutes long. Triple H, the heel, first time in WrestleMania history, the heel the heel going over in the main event. There had been retentions before. Defeats The Rock, Mick Foley, and Big Show.
Yeah.
The match sucked. It was way too long. The four-way thing didn't work. The McMahon in every corner didn't work. Mick Foley, who had retired a month and a half prior, back for this match, just sucked. He wasn't planning on wrestling. He admittedly was not in good shape. He missed that elbow drop off the top to the outside. It was just sloppy. And then, look, I applaud them for doing something different with putting a heel over, but it sucked. It needed a happy ending, and we didn't even get it. Of course, a month later, The Rock ends up winning the title anyways after all that. What are your thoughts on this card?
You got to bring back Linda McMahon. Maybe that's the problem. We need that. We don't like the authority figure, but maybe that's the problem is Linda's been gone too long. So she needs to, claim her champion, whatever it is. Yeah. Like looking at this, and I think you said at the very beginning, I think it's super interesting. We always talk about the Undertaker's streak. He didn't wrestle on this card. So yes, I get the streak is him being undefeated, but if you're looking at him being what was, and I need to dig a little bit more, but at this time, the Undertaker not being on the card, just weird. And the best you've got is this McMahon, and this was, I was in high school when all this was happening. So this is when I was watching every week. I wouldn't miss anything. I'd record, Nitro on one, and then watch on the other. And so, but boy, this was, getting to be the peak of it too. People were tuning in no matter what, but man, retrospect, looking back on this card 20 years later, it was bad.
Yeah,
it's just really bad.
Just an absolute garbage WrestleMania. And again, without looking who else may have been on the roster at the time, the reality is what else are you going to do? I mean, the four-way sucked at the end. I mean, I'd say maybe you do Rock, Triple H one-on-one with The Rock winning and a happy ending. That might help things a little bit. I mean, they had some good matches. They had that IC title ladder match that was awesome. So, there might be something you can do there. But otherwise, you just look at this card and you're like, would you have booked Bull Buchanan differently? Would it have mattered? I mean, there's just not a lot there at this time. Interestingly enough, remember this is the year before WCW would be purchased. So, there was still some talent in the wrestling business that was over in WCW at the time. But just wild, man. And obviously, with Stone Cold being out, that's just a massive, massive gap during this era. The other thing I observed too, Jeff, is the McMahons, you forget how heavily they were involved in storylines for so long. Using our WrestleManias, right? So 14, the Austin era begins. At that point, McMahon's a heel, right? He had just screwed Brett. So you have 14, 15. This is 16. 17 was Shane and Vince. 18, 19. I mean, they were still wrestling. The McMahons were still wrestling and involved. I mean, so that was a 5-year stretch where, at various times, Linda, Shane, Steph, and Vince were all intertwined, working matches, a heavily part of this whole product.
Yeah, and there's just some of that. There's just a level of involvement. It's one of those what if type things, which we'll never know. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, so that's it, man. That's what I got. From a storyline standpoint, talk to us about how we got to this match, because I know there's obviously some variations of this that occurred before, and I got some thoughts on that here in a second. But how do we get to the three-way between these three teams?
Yeah, so I got, I like just kind of, giving the rewind, if you will, and kind of letting people know, given the dates and things like that. So, of course, this WrestleMania was April 2nd. So of 2000, just straight up 2000. What we have is back in January, we had some singles matches with these tag teams. You had Jeff Hardy was taking on Bubba Ray Dudley in a match. And after that, the Dudleys, both Devon and Bubba Ray, attacked the Hardys. And it started with then the power bombing Matt on top of a table. So you had that going. So then the following, or a couple of days later, it was SmackDown. You had Matt against Devon, so the opposite partners. Things again, everybody kind of brawling once again, trying to set up for the power bomb through a table. But again, this time you had Bubba Ray going through the table. Just a lot of this had some back and forth. But at the end of that month, that January, it was actually a Royal Rumble. The Hardys beat the Dudleys in a tag team tables match. It was just the two teams at that point. So what happened is then the following night, the Dudleys, or it gave the Dudleys wanted to kind of show respect and kind of come out and they would help them defeat the New Age Outlaws. But what happened was they wanted a tag shot. It's just a lot of back and forth. And it was kind of the story. It was very kind of straight line, and how I'm explaining it is like different people got involved at different times and different people doing different things. But by the end of it, it was kind of very straight line in regards to you could see where it was going. The two tags had a very simple back and forth with different partners and kind of some backstabbing and things happening there. The Dudleys, of course, turning on the Hardys, so the Outlaws retaining their title, just all these different things. And so, you kind of had that happen. So now, of course, how Edge and Christian become involved in this, them coming out to support the Hardy Boys. Of course, the Dudleys, Edge and Christian go through it's just a lot of going through tables in this one. And so it's really, the only way to kind of say is there was a lot of tables that were burned at this point. And so you're kind of going through that. And so it was actually Devon defeated Edge and Jeff Hardy to earn a shot at the WWF Tag Team Championship at No Way Out. And so they had a feud. Again, the New Age Outlaws were kind of sidebar on this, which is kind of odd to think about because of they were, Degeneration X and doing all this different stuff. But you kind of had all this back and forth. And so their match kind of set up a number one contender, and just everybody kind of feuding with each other led to this match becoming what it was, and all of these groups being involved with one another. And so, and the tables, ladders, chairs part of this, it just made sense with really them. There was stack tables, of course, just them really, in essence, just kicking the crap out of each other. That's really all it boiled down to. Yeah, it was a good culmination of what we were getting in the weeks leading up to it. It made sense.
Yeah, and just to add a few things, we had that No Mercy ladder match between the Hardys and Edge and Christian, which was at the time just like a holy shit. Now be a fun one to cover at some point.
Yeah.
So that kind of laid the foundation of, hey, these teams there's such a rivalry that we need to incorporate ladders. Then you have the Dudleys coming in with the tables. Eventually they would call it tables, ladders, chairs, TLC. But at this time, it's just a three-way ladder match that obviously had a whole bunch of plunder. So, we have a lot more to talk about. We'll obviously talk about it during the match. But, great recap. A lot of stuff happening here. You saw it coming, but that doesn't mean it was a bad thing. Sometimes the obvious builds are the best ones. Mm-hmm. So this was this is what a gimmick match is for. It's for a blow off big time storyline, not because we have a pay-per-view to put on in 2 weeks so these guys can be in a ladder match. So this was done right. It was a really solid build. For those of you that want to watch it with us, we're going to be at the 1 hour and 2 minute mark. WrestleMania 2000 on the WWE Network. Again, that's the 1 hour, 2 minute mark. For those that are watching elsewhere, it's when the Dudleys are being announced and all three teams are about to brawl right after that. So, Jeff, with that being said, let's get to the payoff.
Oh, it's time for the payoff.
All right, here we are, WrestleMania 2000. Let's go ahead and throw this on mute, but we'll play some sound at some point as well. Dudley's coming to the ring. Jeff, which of these three teams were your favorite at this time?
I was hoping you were going to ask me that.
Oh, okay.
I actually, I was the biggest fan of the Dudley Boys.
Me too.
I think it was just I'm going to guess because of you and a little bit of the ECW.
Correct.
But for me, it was the whole table gimmick of them. And I think it was because they were doing some of this stuff that at least at the time I felt, while you had the wrestling, like just the hardcore of what they were trying to do was better. So That was my opinion.
Yeah, ironically, I like the Dudleys the best, then I like the Hardys, and then Edge and Christian the least.
Which is, of course, in retrospect, it's funny kind of looking back on that and what we got here. So it's stark contrast for those of you not kind of watching at home with us. This is one where, of course, we covered like Razor and Shawn, and that was one ladder. They've got multiple ladders around the ring, kind of coming up the aisleway as well, too. And so definitely the evolution of the ladder match at this point, just a lot more happening that got them to this point where they have that. A lot of brawling happening right now, both inside and outside of the ring. All the tag teams kind of interchanging and kind of, trading blows, which is kind of fun to see. Just I say a hot start, which is always good.
Well, and it's in such stark contrast to everything else on this show because, half this show was comedy. A lot of it sucked. Then you had this match and you had a really great three-way for the Intercontinental and European Championship. So weird show.
And you got this match. So, and we kind of went through it, but this match was fourth on the card. So it was very unassuming. Like, and we're barely an hour in, like, not, and we started at an hour 2. And so like us being in this match at the point we are, like, you wouldn't have really thought that this match would have been what it was, because like you said, right before it was, TNA defeating Head Cheese. You did forget about Chester McCheeserton. You can't forget about that and the guy in the cheese outfit. And so that was just terrible. And the match after this was the cat fight, and Val Venus is the special guest referee. And so it was, looking at the card and kind of, you wouldn't have known when this was coming, but it was very just unassuming. Like the fans are all kind of in their seats. Nobody's really standing. Like we've got a couple ladders in the ring right now, but nobody's really climbed or anything. Nothing's really happened. It's just odd,
So they did they obviously did a TLC match later on this year, and then the following year at WrestleMania 17 they did another TLC match, so kind of a rematch to this third match in the trilogy, if you will. In general, I mean, do you love rematches, hate rematches, or it just depends?
Good question. This is one I was very much a fan of when they ended the automatic, or they announced that they were ending the automatic rematch clause, because I do think it kind of. Oh, and so that was Christian running right into a ladder, and so now we're getting them physical with the ladders. Edge just getting run over. The Hardy Boys holding both ends of the ladder, and then taking out Edge. I think that it did hurt for a long time, like that automatic rematch, because we just keep seeing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
Like it was just super annoying. You got Jeff holding down Devon right now, Matt going up top. So yeah, I'm glad we still get it now, but I wish we didn't.
Well, and the reason I ask is, I've read a lot and heard a lot about how Vince McMahon, at least at WrestleMania is concerned, hates rematches. Right?
Yes.
Like that's why you never saw Hogan Warrior 2. You never saw Hogan Savage 2, right? I mean, some of these great matches, you never got them again, really ever in a lot of cases, but certainly not at WrestleMania. And so I don't mind them, right? Like I have no problem with these guys doing 3 matches. They were all incredible.
Jeff missing a 450 onto a ladder.
Missed a 450 onto a ladder. His leg kind of lands like in the middle.
But he pops right back up. Just another day for Jeff Hardy.
I know.
Yeah. In regards to that and the kind of rematch and things like that, I think that, and it's just part of what you and
Brutal.
at least what I want is it should make sense. I think you and I have had this conversation a little bit, especially recently, that, and there's who's a Bubba kind of backsplash onto, I don't even know who's underneath the ladder, a Christian. No, that's Jeff. So, I think it's one of those where if it doesn't make sense, like I think what was it most recently, the pay-per-view, that it just didn't make sense for like the Hell in a Cell. Like it didn't make sense. It was Hell in a Cell. It didn't make sense to be a Hell in a Cell match.
That's how all these themes are. And I understand you have to, sell network subscriptions, but we have ladder matches because, it's June and it's time for Money in the Bank or whatever. And it's just, it's really frustrating.
Bring back Balls of Fire, Vince, you coward. But anyways,
when it's great so far. Leg drop there. I mean, there's a lot of nonstop.
not high spots, but a lot of just rough action at this point. Like they're really going at each other.
So here's a question for you. So, we obviously have 6 guys in there. We have 3 teams, pretty, lot of action so far. Do you prefer like 8 guys in a Money in the Bank match, or do you prefer 3 teams like this?
I thought the tag, so going off of like kind of recent history, because nothing's kind of coming around. Devon, or who's a Bubba Ray, actually has the ladder on his head now, and he's kind of spinning around and hitting everybody. Going off of more recent, like the Elimination Chamber and the doing tags in Elimination Chamber, I thought was really good.
Me too. So, I'm just thinking this as I'm watching it. I'm like, this to me is way better than when you have 8 singles guys in a ladder match and they're doing all kinds of like spots. Like if I see that 7 guys like huddling up and 1 guy jumping and somehow knocking them all out over it. Like I hate that stuff. Like this to me, like right now you have some teamwork with like Christian and Edge, and it just makes sense, right? Like versus singles. I never really noticed it, but I think the tags, like 2 tags or 3 tags or even 6 in the Elimination Chamber, I just think it makes a little bit more sense. I really like it.
And I think it all boils down to you got to use like the stipulations properly. You got Christian now trying to go up to the ladder, nowhere near the center of the ring, but still climbing out. You got, who's this, Matt and Bubba Ray outside, Christian jumping out to the outside. There's the camera flashes that we love. Everybody laid out on the outside now, Christian, Bubba Ray, and Matt. I think it's just using the stipulations properly. Like there should be some stakes to it. And I think, granted what's happening in the world and, WWE not acknowledging it doesn't help anything, for some of these builds on some of these. So there's the first Edge spear from the turnbuckle to Jeff Hardy.
That was great.
Just good stuff. So, and that's when Jeff was on the ladder, not the iconic spear. We'll get there. So, it got that. But yeah, I think it's just using the stipulations correctly.
Agreed. Yeah. So this tag thing's pretty good. One thing I noticed when Edge and Christian came out, Edge has had 2, because remember he used that song as a singles guy too. Mm-hmm. He's had 2 really good theme songs in his career.
This was
that was like a sit-down Razor's Edge by Matt Hardy. That was awesome.
There's the camera above the ring look now too. It's just good.
No, but I was saying Edge had 2 awesome theme songs.
Yeah. Well, and did you buy?
I forgot about the "You Think You Know Me." Like, I mean, that was a pretty cool song. And then, obviously his current one, I think is fantastic. I think I know what you're about to ask me.
Did you buy the albums?
Did I buy a CD of wrestling entrance songs?
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking me?
Let's call it what it is for maybe some of our younger fans. Yes.
Of course I did. And why do you think I bought them? Because we all needed entrance songs to play on the boombox for the Backyard Wrestling Federation that
you would have to. Yeah. Oh, there's a Bubba Ray punching Christian in the ass. That was interesting.
Oh yeah, we had the anthologies or whatever they called them, and I remember around this time, because we all picked a song, and that's what we came out to. I came out to Triple H's song at this point.
You had to go.
This is gonna be good. So Bubba's got him in a diamond. Holy shit.
Off the top. Yeah, off the top of the ladder.
Bubba just did a diamond cutter to Christian off the top of the ladder. Whew.
So we're about 10 minutes in right now. We've still got about probably another 10.
Oh, stop it with the spoilers.
No, but I'm saying this match, my brother and I talk about this a lot. This is sometimes it takes matches like a while, as we like to say, to get cooking. Like, and I feel like that's a lot of times like WWE matches nowadays, like just when they're starting to get good, they're over.
Okay. So go ahead.
I was going to say, so this is one where they are still going. So you got Matt and Jeff now going up to the top of the ladders, fans standing up, Bubba laid out in the middle. You got the leg drop and just the frog splash onto Bubba laid out. Yeah. It's one of those where, and that's why, New Japan, yes, it's not for everybody because a 60-minute match all the time can be very, it's tough. But if you can get it cooking right, that's the way to go. And so this is one where in my opinion, they're already cooking pretty good on this one.
Well, and look, I know I do this every couple weeks, and I know that I'll get some flack for it, but compared to some of the stuff that we see now, to me, this is not a spot fest. Like, this is a good flowing match that just has a lot of high impact moves. This isn't, I mean, if you haven't seen them like setting up for gymnastics, boom, double superplex off the top of the ladder on the Devon. But I mean, that wasn't like a setup spot. It was just, I mean, it was like, right? I mean, you understand what I'm saying? There's a lot more of a flow to this. They're all out right now. Nobody's jumping back up. They're not setting up the next, gymnastics move. Just six guys that have had the shit kicked out of them already.
It's some of that, I think, and we know sometimes that just looks bad. And there's been a lot of matches, especially lately, where it's just like, okay, you're just waiting on things to happen. Like, it just, and it doesn't look right. So we're getting, again, and this was before looking at the kind of ladders that they have right now. This is at least before the introduction of the multi-sized ladders. I do want to point that out a little bit too.
Oh, they're all the same size. These are all probably about 8 feet, I'd say. Because they're all, that's fine.
Oh, that's you and me ladder experts, and so it's definitely an 8-footer in there.
Well, I'm just eyeing it down because you got 6 feet guys that are 2 rungs up.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, moves so that was so they're kind of back, throwing each other kind of backwards off the ladders and stuff. Everybody just kind of laid out. That was rough too because you almost clipped the ropes on that one too.
Oh yeah, when you're falling backwards.
It's got to be tough. Like, and this is too, like, them getting out. So the fans most of them still kind of sitting at this point, but you had a couple spots though, where they've at least kind of shown they get a little bit more involved and stand up, which is always nice. So it's moving kind of slow at this point. So that's okay.
This is one of the sneaky worst WrestleManias.
Yeah, that would be interesting for us to have a longer conversation.
I'm not saying ever, but I'm saying in this era, right? Like, I mean,
yes.
Some of the early WrestleManias sucked except for one match. I get that. It was just a different era. But during this era, this was just bad. I mean, the following year was 17. It was maybe the best one ever.
So you got everybody's climbing ladders now. You got 3 ladders in the ring. You got everybody is at least about 3, 4, 5 steps up on the ladder. And just kind of camera flash is going off. Like, there goes one ladder with... Christian and Jeff falling to the outside of the ring. Just things happening. And that, like, the camera angle didn't even catch that. So then you've got Matt and Edge now, the ladder getting pushed over and they falling on the top rope, of course.
All 6 on the ground. Dude, now you see everyone standing. Now everyone's standing going crazy. Like,
singing at a higher pitch after that one. That's for sure.
Dude, that spot, I forget which 2 flew out of the ring that way. It was Jeff and Christian.
And Jeff. If it's crazier than most other spots, it's probably Jeff. Let's just call it what it is. So, and him being out there, just doing the same crazy shit for as long as he's done. So now you've got the Dudleys both, I say, standing tall, barely standing in the ring.
Yeah, getting ready to climb the ladder. Everyone's going crazy. Hey, let me hit you with something real quick. How good is Edge?
Yeah, I think that good,
like,
for
super
him.
Underrated, right? Like, promos, in-ring work, great tag worker. His singles stuff, especially against The Undertaker and really against a lot of guys. I mean, he was phenomenal. Really great heel with the Lita stuff. Like, dude, I mean, he's just – I forgot how good he was.
Yeah, there was a 3D to Edge, so the Dudleys powering up now. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like, props to him, and it's really great to see him back and able to be out there. You can tell. I would hope here comes the tables for the first time now.
Yeah, keep Edge special. Don't work him on TV. I want him to stay healthy. I heard he signed a 3-year contract, man. I hope he stays healthy and has 3 years of some big matches. Anymore, man. And you heard, like, Daniel Bryan wants to scale back. Dude, these guys I know someone has to work TV and we have to fill TV time. Dude, I'm fine with Brock and Daniel Bryan and Randy Orton and Edge and 20 other guys. Not call them part-timers, call them whatever you want. I just don't need to see them wrestle in meaningless matches. Keep them off the house shows. It's not a big part of your business anymore. Make them special. Maybe you give Daniel Bryan 6 or 8 just kick-ass pay-per-view matches a year. Maybe a little bit of TV stuff, mostly out of the ring. Cut promos. Great.
Well, and I think I'd said on an episode a long time ago and I get there's too many belts right now, and there is, but
no, there's 3 times as many belts as there should be. Too many doesn't cover it.
But I do think so. Now you've got 2 ladders set up. They're setting the Dudleys are putting a table across the 2 of them in the center of the ring with the belts still kind of hanging over the center here. I had said again, but I think like introduce a Legends belt. I think that's the way that you can kind of have them. We can still see them. I think it wouldn't necessarily interrupt the flow of, some of these other tag teams. And like, okay, that's fine. Like Goldberg doesn't need, the universal title right now. He would never be in that picture. So you could still have a different storyline going on if you had that belt. And like, you can use the Legends term, it's Vince, you can do whatever you want. But like, okay, so like the Undertaker, like he's probably never going to win a belt again. Like I would love to see him, and like you've said multiple times, like win it, lay it down, and walk away. We got a lot of hardware in the ring right now with ladders, tables, and
so we have
no chairs.
3 tables and 3 ladders in there right now.
2 setup tables. Yeah, there we go. And so, but I think that's like one route they could go in order to keep, like you said, some of these people engaged. And okay, Daniel Bryan, like. Why push if he wants to have a part-time schedule and doesn't want to work as much? Okay, then that's fine. Like bring him back, let him do a couple months stint and then have him leave again. But like, I think just like, and I get like the other argument of like, try and write, a week or, as much wrestling as they do every week and keep it consistent and keep a product like as good as it is, well, relatively good lately. Like even back like this stuff, like the build for this was a couple of months. Like we don't even get that anymore. Spanish announce table.
I remember what comes here, and this is just absolutely vicious.
So we've got
Bubba's got
Matt. They're standing on the Spanish table. There's another table set up next to it. Devon missing and going through a table.
Watch this,
and then just a huge power bomb through the table. He was great. Like just his kind of demeanor in the ring. I remember always thinking that he was crazy.
I heard his stuff in TNA was really good too. I haven't seen any of it.
Yeah, and I think it's underrated just how good he is. And so that's what I know, especially seeing like some of his tweets. I know sometimes he catches flack for a lot of them and kind of defending some of the things that happen. But at the same time, I like the guy. I think that, he's got the perspective that obviously none of the rest of us will have. I saw him in a Ring of Honor show with my brother and a couple friends. And there was a table spot in that, and he was actually handing pieces of the table out. And he was playing up the heel angle. He was being an asshole to like people at the autograph signing before the show, like giving people a hard time. Like, I'm not going to sign your shit, doing all this other stuff. Oh, it's a throwing the ladder at Jeff. You can tell from the green hair.
Do you understand what I'm saying? That this feels more like a street fight that has tables and ladders as opposed to the spot fests that you see now.
Yes,
absolutely. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, this is like, hey, these 6 guys are trying to absolutely decimate each other. There just happens to be weapons around, and you have to climb a ladder. Oh my!
So here comes the big boy. We've got the big ladder now in the aisleway.
So I haven't seen this match in years, and what I forget is what happened in this one and what happened in some of their other ones. So that's why I'm like somewhat surprised. Yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. That's great. So he's setting that up. One of my favorite things for the WrestleManias is I love watching the vignettes at the beginning on like the history of wrestling. I just love the opening, montages that they do. This one was really good if you have a chance. But it's just, even if you took 5 minutes and just, per show and just watch the opening ones, they were all awesome in their own way, man. Even going back to like the early ones.
You and I have said it multiple times. Like we'll share some of those videos that they post on YouTube, and even like some of the documentaries. Some of those documentaries are some of the behind the scenes stuff are some of the better produced stuff like in any industry.
I mean, you understand that the production team in terms of highlights, vignettes, montages. I mean, they're exponentially better than the NFL or any professional sports league. I mean, they're incredible what they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is like that team. And I don't think that team gets enough credit for what they do. So here comes the spot. Jeff Hardy taking his shirt off. You have Bubba Ray laid out on a table. This is the what is it? What are we looking at? About a 12, 13 footer there. You and I should know.
Oh gosh. It's at least double the size of him. He's probably 6 feet tall. It's got to be a 12-foot ladder.
So climbing up to the top
on commentary, they said it was a 20-foot ladder.
And so Jeff's standing at the very, very top of the ladder. Of course,
look at that shot. How good of a visual is that?
In the iconic swanton, killing himself in the process. The ref running in to check on him. So good. And then Bubba Ray still laid out in between the splayed table, just being dead. And these guys are still wrestling. Right.
20 years later.
Yeah, after that, and we know what they've put themselves through, and this is we overlook too. We see the ring bell laying next to Jeff. This was after Edge had hit or Christian had taken someone out with the ring bell as well too. So just you can't overlook that. Just all the different angles here for the spot. The camera flash is already going off like crazy. God, I miss that. Like just that moment where the cameras go insane. We're back in the ring now. Oh, that's right. There's a whole other match still happening. We can't forget about that. And we have this crazy setup still where nothing has happened with the ladders, kind of in that crazy table setup and the pommel horse type style. So, and everybody kind of clawing their way back into the ring here.
So Lillian sung the national anthem at the beginning of the show. Dude, I forgot the fact that she's basically been around the wrestling business for over 20 years. I don't know why. When I saw her, I'm like, she's been around that long?
A lot of them, yeah. And
I know not consistently, but she has her podcast now and she still pops up and she was on Raw for years and stuff. It's just crazy.
Coming back for things. And some of these guys like Jeff and Matt have been performing like this whole time.
Even when they weren't in the WWE or F, they were still performing.
Right. And same with like Bubba Ray, and kind of, and doing what they do. So now you've got, who is this? We have Matt and Christian standing on the table, kind of trying not to break it. You got Edge climbing up the side here as well too. This just looks crazy. Like this is one of those where trying to stand up and grab the belts. Through the table,
destroyed
that
the
was
table.
laid out there. But Edge and Christian standing there now, pulling the belts down for the victory.
There you go. Hey, I got a question for you. If Edge grabbed one title and Devon grabbed the other title, does a team win once they grab one title, or could two guys from two different teams win? Has that ever been done before?
There is a rule book out there. We would have to consult the rules on that because I'm not 100% sure how that works. But yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. Next time we have we got some more guests lined up soon here. We'll have to ask one of our future guests, what would you do in that scenario? That would probably lead to, it would be appropriate for like the pay-per-view before and then leading to a match where you're unsure of who has the belts. But at WrestleMania, I'm glad we didn't have to deal with that this WrestleMania. Oh boy, he took that table bump square. Good stuff. Okay.
All I know is if there was a ruling, Mark Chioda would have made the wrong decision.
Yeah, Mark Chioda. That's right. Your buddy, Mark Chioda.
All right. So let's, great match. Let's transition into the aftermath.
Oh, it's time for the aftermath.
All right. So initial thoughts on this one, Jeff.
It was just good action from start to finish, like everything happening that, the whole time, and even you and I, like we kind of, there was a few moments where you and I were talking where we just kind of like wanted to watch for a second. I had kind of watched parts of this leading up to it. But everyone could hear your reaction, Tom, and just kind of some of these spots, because it had been a while since you had watched the whole thing through.
Yeah, I'll get into it in my payoff score, but man, that was probably slightly better than I remembered, and I'll just quickly tell you why. It was just like a war. It wasn't a spot fest. It was just like they just beat the hell out of each other, did some big moves, but it was just nonstop. It was really, really good. So storyline wise, what happened following this?
Yeah, so immediately after this one, you had Edge and Christian. They actually started being the heels. And they were kind of like the comedy stuff, like you and I had talked about. This kind of the era of this a little bit. So they had used to been coming through the crowd for their entrance, and at this point, they kind of would, make fun of, their opponents when they would come to the ring. This is where the reek of awesomeness started. And of course, too, we can't forget about the 5-second pose for the benefit of those with flash photography. That's where a lot of this was born as well too. And so you gotta love that. That was classic stuff. Like that was the stuff I remember, but that's when a lot of this was happening for the two of them. And kind of have that where, of course they'd stand in the middle of the ring so the fans could take pictures. That was, of course, hopefully they were sitting on the hard cam side, but just kind of good stuff. And so of course, kind of just making fun of their different opponents. So they actually retained the titles after this against, like we had said, Degeneration X. It was X-Pac and Road Dogg at the next pay-per-view, which was Backlash. They feuded with a couple different groups, of course. Just a weird time in wrestling, though. There was actually on Raw where they dropped the titles to Scotty 2 Hotty and Grandmaster Sexy. And so
sex A.
Sorry, I forgot. Yeah, there's an A in there. And so, or AH, however, yeah, AY. Yeah. So you kind of have that too. And so, but just having that different thing. But they ended up winning the belts again. It was actually King of the Ring back then, when that was still a pay-per-view. It was a 4 corners match, and they ended up winning the tag titles for the second time during that one. The Dudleys actually, like, they're big. Like I said, I think part of it was the 3D through the tables. That was a big thing for them, and them kind of always introducing tables and get the tables. I remember a couple years ago now where they came back and they had the giant pop when they get the tables, and so that was just fantastic. But this was after this. If you remember, there was a long period here where he would power bomb, which we talk about intergender or cross-gender wrestling, whatever you want to call it, that they would power bomb or 3D women through tables a lot at this time. And so and some of the classics, of course, you had Lita, you had Trish Stratus, Tori Wilson, Stacy Keibler, all of them. Mae Young, can't forget about that. Just all of them taking table spots, and that was just a big one. They feuded with TNA for quite a while as well too. Of course, Degeneration X as well. Just a lot of different things kind of happening for them. And the Hardy Boys, they back and forth. These guys continued to have back and forth with everybody because they were just performing at such a high level. Like you were referenced time, there was a tables, ladders, chairs match at SummerSlam that year, as well as the following year. You had all of them kind of getting involved in that one. That was the Hardy Boys and Edge and Christian. And the Dudley Boys. It was all three. That's what I'm remembering, right? But then you actually had the Radicals feuding with Edge and Christian for a little while too. So it was just all kinds of things kind of happening, which, the Radicals, why that wasn't a bigger deal at the time. It should have been with that kind of pairing that they had, but that's a little different, or a different conversation for a different time. But, so a lot of course, we know the kind of longer term story. That was the kind of brief kind of what happened after that. And so you kind of had all that happening, of course, but, and leading to the kind of, tables, ladders, and chair match, things like that. So just a whole lot of good things coming from this. They continued to stay, I say, relevant and successful, and continuing to be in the ring, doing what they were doing, and just being entertaining to watch.
Dude, a lot to this went on for a long time, man. You forget about it. I mean, everything leading up to this, everything, and the fact that these teams, kind of were intertwined on a weekly basis, 12 pay-per-views a year, over a multi-year period is just absolutely fascinating. So, really interesting. It'd be kind of fun now if I guess you got the Matt Hardy, involved in the Edge storyline, but it'd be fun to see like a Matt Hardy Edge match at some point. I don't know. But anyways, I'm curious how this was received in the dirt sheets. So what do you have for us?
So I'll start with the Pro Wrestling Torch. I'll wait to get to your buddy. And so kind of won't read you through the rundown here, but they kind of get into a thoroughly enjoyable athletic showcase. They actually gave it 4 out of 5 stars. They said the ladder match was an incredible stunt match. It made sense to give Edge and Christian the win, as they were clearly perceived as being a notch below their opponents and need the rub of the tag titles. The Dudleys are early candidates for most improved. When they left ECW, did anyone think they would be as over as they are now? Matt Hardy stepped up and finally seen, and so this was a line that I figure you would appreciate because it includes your buddy. Matt Hardy stepped up and finally seemed to be his brother's equal rather than the Marty Jannetty of the team. And so kind of crazy. And for those of you at home, like Tom is laughing right now because him and I, and you know, kind of what's happening. I think it's crazy that back in 2000, them saying that Matt Hardy, comparing him to the Marty Jannetty of the Hardy Boys.
Dude, it's one of the most overused phrases in all of professional wrestling. Any tag team debuts, oh, well, that guy's the Marty Jannetty. Gallows, he's the, I mean, like, dude, it's so stupid, but whatever. I mean, I don't know at any era where, I mean, look, I think Jeff's probably, you know, the more charismatic, the more popular. But, dude, I mean, Matt Hardy's had an incredible career. When it's all said and done, maybe slightly less remarkable than Jeff Hardy just because of the world titles and stuff like that. But, man, you're gonna. I don't know. At no point do I think that Matt Hardy was a distant second to Jeff. So I think it's actually a poor comparison.
No, and I do too. And it's not fair. And I get Marty Jannetty gets shit on all the time, but you know, it's what it is. So, so that one was, they gave it 4 stars. You've got the Wrestling Observer on this one. They actually also gave it 4 stars. I think one point that we can agree on here, and I thought the interesting piece of the write-up here says the biggest money wrestling extravaganza of all time hardly lived up to the hype.
Correct.
WrestleMania 16, WrestleMania 2000, what we're talking about. The first WrestleMania that seemed to take on almost Super Bowl or Final Four level proportions as an American institution turned out like many Super Bowls with a flat crowd, a been there, done that, main event finish ending in a disappointing match. And with the exception of the ladder match, which was an amazing stunt show, interesting they both called it that, it was probably not as good as an average episode of Raw. That's a hot take, that especially back then.
You know, it's an interesting point that I hadn't thought about. It probably really hurts this show that it's in Anaheim as opposed to Philly, Boston, Chicago, New York, you know, like a real stronghold. So I will say that there's something to it because the crowd, even during that match, was like, kind of dull. I mean, you look at the crowd, like I still have it on, like in the background. It just doesn't look like a great crowd. So yeah, I mean, you put this in Philly, and I'd like to think it would have been, you know, a little bit hotter. So I think that's a fair point, right? It's in an arena in Anaheim, California, as opposed to a stadium in New York. It's gonna make a big difference.
Yeah. So I think that just kind of interesting the takes here. I'll kind of jump right into our scores and kind of talking about it. They each gave it 4 out of 5. Okay. I think we can the overall show, I think we can agree on. I'll give this one. It was bad. I'll give the match a 7.5. I think that, you know,
that's your payoff score, 7.5.
That's my score. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that it is. It was good. I think that it did give us like kind of the iconic image with Jeff Hardy kind of swanton off the top of the ladder. I wish I could give it more. I did appreciate the build and the kind of different back and forth. And so that did kind of give it a little bit more of the purpose and things like that. But again, I think that, and I would definitely not give it any lower because it didn't feel too scripted. It didn't feel like, okay, they knew what spot they needed to get to next. We knew, of course, some of the big ones like the swanton and the ending and things like that. That made sense. But I think a lot of the other pieces, you know, I was, not sure what was going to happen. And so I think that's why it made it good for me. So Tom, what do you got? What's your score?
Slightly higher than you. So I'm actually at an 8 for this. I thought so. I think the build was good. I don't think the build of this storyline was incredible. I just think it was 3 tag teams that hated each other, which is fine. That's what I think hurts it a little bit in terms of the actual match, dude. fast-paced, never a dull moment. That wasn't gymnastics, spot monkey stuff like you see too often now. It was just a car crash, 6 guys beating the shit out of each other. There were some really good spots in it. Never dull, fast-paced. Really liked it. So I got this one at an 8, man. It was good. And again, I hadn't thought about it until you just mentioned it. I do think that the Anaheim crowd heard it. I think that with the right crowd, that this place would have been, going crazy. So that's where I stand on it. But overall, really good match. Highly recommend going back and watching it. It's worth 20 minutes of your time as you're reliving WrestleMania moments here this time of the year.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's all I have.
Yeah, good stuff. Of course, as always, we appreciate everybody kind of tuning in every week and listening to us. Tom, I know the world's a little crazy right now, and Tom and I enjoy bringing this stuff to you and continuing to do this, and we will make sure we're doing that. So we had a lot of people in this match. I do want to kind of shout them out on Twitter. It's going to be a full Twitter tag when we kind of put this one out there. So you've got Edge and Christian. Edge, of course, the big match. You got at Edge rated R. He's out there. Christian, he is at Christian for Peeps. That's the number 4 and then Peeps, like the candy. The Hardys, of course, you got at Matt Hardy Brand and at Jeff Hardy Brand. Matt is crazy on Twitter. He's a fantastic follow, especially with everything happening in AEW, as well as his wife, Rebel, and the kind of family all being involved. I think they're going to go down that road again with him being broken again. And so I think that's definitely something to tune into. Of course, at Bully Ray 5150, make sure to tune into him as well, too. He's got his own show, great insight in kind of what's happening in wrestling. And then you have at Testify Devon, and so make sure to check him out as well too. So a bunch of social media plugs for everybody. So of course, one with the best one, of course, that's us. So we're at Payoff Pod, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We love seeing that. Feel free, make sure to comment. Let us know how you're feeling. We like those of you that aren't aware, we occasionally drop some secret koozie mailings out to people, and so we got those. So we enjoy sharing those with our fans, and you all being able to show those off and kind of share with your friends as well too. So we'll get that stuff out to you. So Tom, any kind of final thoughts? You Testify. What do you got here, buddy?
No, I just appreciate everyone following the Payoff on the ladder to success.
It was the nonchalant delivery got me, buddy. That was good.
Snuck it in there.
I appreciate it. Good job.
As always, thank you for joining us on The Payoff.